Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to a PTA-sponsored, very special assembly today on health and medicine. And it is also World Mental Health Month this month. So it's a great time and great timing to do this. I want to thank, first of all, our guest speakers today, our panelists. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. Our School Board of Education, Dr. Goodman, the PTA, Susan Mealy, the PTA president, for all their support, and also Mr. Colasuonno and Mr. Trahey for volunteering as health and science teachers on staff here to assist us in moderating today. And once again, thank you to our guests, and we're going to get started.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tobin. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Health and Sciences Career Panel. This is part of a series of panels the PTA will be hosting on a variety of different careers. If you attended a few weeks ago, it was on music and the arts. This one is on health and sciences. We're very lucky today to have 6 panelists who will be sharing their experiences with us about working in the health and science fields. And I'd like to take a second to introduce our 6 panelists now. So if you want to just give a wave as I call your name out. First, we have Dr. Lawrence Freed, the Assistant Professor of Clinical Neurology. Ms. Therese Gardier, Pediatric Nurse Practitioner. Dr. Alan Benitez, Director of Clinical Research. Ms. Laura Benke, Physical Therapist and Orthopedic Clinical Specialist. Dr. Domenico Tortorello, Professor of Microbiology. And Dr. Thomas Angelo, Attending Physician, Pediatrics. So we just want to make it clear to everyone in the audience that Mr. Trahey, our biology teacher here at the high school, and myself will be asking our panelists a variety of questions, but we really encourage audience participation. So if you have a question or a comment at any point, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we will do our best to have everything answered. All right, so at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Trahey to get us started.
All right, hello everybody. Nice to see everyone. So basically, we're just to kind of get us started. If you need to just take a turn telling us a little bit about an overview about what it is that you do for a living, what your job is, where do you work, what does it entail, what kind of schooling did you need to get into that career, the setting, the type of hours, job site, are you in an office setting or a hospital setting or a laboratory setting? Just kind of give us each an overview and maybe that'll stem some other questions from the audience.
So maybe we can go in the order I announced. Maybe Dr. Freed, would you like to start?
Sure. So hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel discussion today. I'm very excited to share with you what I do on a daily basis. So I don't know how many of you have ever even heard of what a pediatric neurologist is, but I'm a doctor who takes care of kids who have headaches, seizure disorders. Many of my patients are actually your age, and I actually work at a big hospital in Philadelphia called the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I may live in Philly now, but I am a native New Yorker, so I do know Tuckahoe well. I do split my time between the main hospital where I take care of kids who are admitted in the hospital and also the outpatient setting, such as where you go for your doctor's appointments. And I do a lot of research, but I also take care of patients, and that's my first and foremost priority.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Gardier?
Therese Gardier. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. I currently work in the field of pediatric urology. I take care of kids all ages from birth until their young adulthood into their 20s who have a variety of urologic issues, problems with their kidneys and bladders and genitals. So my training was undergraduate. I was a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I did work as a staff nurse for about 4 years at Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital here in Westchester and Columbia Presbyterian. I then went on for a master's degree and have worked as a pediatric nurse practitioner, which is a person who is trained to take care of kids, to assess, to diagnose, and to treat generally. So we have a general training and then subspecialized within pediatric urology. I work now in an office setting where I am now seeing patients throughout the day. I also do see children in the hospital and in the emergency department when needed as a consult.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Benitez?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the invitation. Like Dr. Freed, and I'm a pediatric institution in Philadelphia Children's Hospital. So I do not see patients. I am exclusively research. So what I do in my daily days, like other than like plotting diagrams here, trying to figure out diseases and how to like treat them and cure them or figure out why they happen, and then drinking a lot of coffee in the meantime. So what we try to do is try and like just like that. It's just like we try to figure out like why kids get sick, and try to figure out not just at the cellular level, but we also use animal models to try to test different treatments on these models and see how we can then maybe take those treatments and test them in humans, and after that, maybe some of those treatments can be used safely in individuals. So other than that, I do a lot of writing, and I try to get funding for a lot of the research that I do. And the other part that I do that I really love doing, it's training like the next generation of scientists that do a lot of mentoring for students. And Dr. Freed is very much aware of that, and he does too. So that's in a nutshell what we do on our daily life.
Great, thank you. Ms. Banky?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and having this. This is great. So I hope kids enjoy. So I am a physical therapist. I work in orthopedics outpatient, which is a clinic that is a private office. So for example, we'll get, usually prescriptions from orthopedic doctors for post-op, so surgeries, or a variety of injuries. So I treat anywhere from small babies that come in with torticollis that might have some really orthopedic and alignment issues, up to seniors that might come in with hip replacement. So it's the spectrum. I said predominantly orthopedics. We do some neurological patients also. So it's a one of many opportunities in physical therapy as far as the field goes. You can work in hospitals and schools and a variety, but right now it's currently a private practice that my focus is.
Excellent. Dr. Tortorella?
Yeah, so I'm at Icahn School of Medicine in Mount Sinai Microbiology. I'm a trained virologist where basically run a medical research lab where we study how viruses get around the immune system. And this also includes our new favorite target, which is SARS-CoV-2. So we basically develop therapeutics and try to understand more molecular biology, what the virus does and how it manipulates cellular processes. Daily life is, I have a lab full of grad students and postdoctoral fellows that we try to train, like Dr. Benitez, with regards to the next generation of scientists. I'm also a director of a training grant for pre and postdoctoral students, and we also teach medical students and graduate students throughout the year.
Excellent. And Dr. Angelo?
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Goodman to inviting me to this forum. I think this is great. And to Jen Schneider, big shout out for the PTA. Thanks a lot. For people who don't know me, some people do know me because I might be their doctor. And you've come to see me before, so you guys kind of know what you do. I think everybody in the school has a pediatrician. And so that's kind of what I do. I take care of from basically birth to 21 and then beyond in certain situations. We basically work in the hospital. So we see babies in the hospital from the minute they're born. And sometimes when kids get sick, they get admitted back to the hospital. We have to go back and take care of them there. But most of my time is done in the office, seeing patients all day long. So it's more of a clinical job rather than a research job like some of the other distinguished people on this panel have. I feel like my job as a general pediatrician, we kind of do everything, right? So we're infectious disease doctors, and we're orthopedics, and we're psychologists, and we give shots. And so we try to do our best to try to take care of everybody as we move forward. Certainly becoming a physician, and everybody else on this panel knows how challenging it is. So as far as working, to get pretty good grades to get to this point. And then when we are working, it's pretty intense. So if anybody's thinking of becoming a pediatrician or a physician, you know, I think this is a great forum for people to listen and learn about what we do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So as the audience can see, we have a very wide range of professionals in both the health and science field. So we want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about what influenced you to get into this profession. Maybe it was a favorite subject that you took in middle school, high school. Maybe it was a specific mentor, a teacher, or someone that guided you along the way or influenced you to go into this field or profession. So if you wouldn't mind talking about that, we can start at the beginning again, or we can go in a different order, whatever you would prefer. Mr. Fried or Dr. Fried, if you'd like to start.
Sure, happy to. So I actually have I've always been interested in science, and so I have to give my parents credit for making sure that I spent all my summers doing all sorts of fun little summer camps that involved science, like making rockets and all sorts of strange things. But really, when I was in high school, I really fell in love with biology. I loved the subject matter, and I thought that dissecting the frog was really neat. And I knew when I was I knew when I was in college that I wanted to do something that involved teaching and science. And the fork in the road for me was, do I want to become a teacher, a professor, high school teacher, or do I want to go into medicine? And I think what helped me to make that decision was the fact that you probably can't tell on this video here, but I actually wear hearing aids. And so I've always been exposed to the healthcare setting in some capacity, through just seeing my audiologist. And I think that was always in the back of my mind that this would be a really neat field to go into. And when I was in college, I had the opportunity to explore what it was like to be in a doctor's office, work there in different capacities. And that was my experiences in college that really ultimately drove me to pull all of my interests together to really decide to pursue a medical degree. And I think one thing I realized I didn't answer in the first question, I don't think anybody actually did, but just briefly, as far as how to actually become a doctor. And if that's something that you decide you're interested in doing, number one, definitely get those good grades in high school, but listen to your teachers, do your homework, all that. And none of the moderators told me to say that, but it's all true. And you need to do well in high school, then go to college, which is 4 years typically, and then medical school, which is another 4 years. And then you pick a specialty or an area of interest and you do a residency followed by a fellowship. And I will say that for me, that combined journey was about 10 years, including medical school. So, or maybe 14 if you include college. But in any event, don't look at the long number. The important thing is you get to do what you love. And so I think that is a brief answer to your question.
Great. Thank you so much. Ms. Gardier?
Thank you. So I too have always had an interest in science and math. I always really liked math as well. Dr. Fried and I have never met. We didn't talk before this, but I was going to bring up dissecting the frog in Mr. Hempel's 7th grade science class, I believe it was, and I was a student at Tuckahoe High School. I also had the opportunity when I was in biology in 10th grade at that time. If you had a certain grade point average and you wrote an essay showing interest that you wanted to pursue a career either as a nurse or a physician at the time, went on a class trip to Bellevue Hospital and was able to go into the operating room and kind of check out what that was like day to day. So I've had an interest in that for a long time, and that I would say really did kind of push me. And I knew at that point I definitely wanted to work in healthcare. And I always was torn between whether or not I should pursue medicine or nursing, to be honest. And I chose the nursing route for a variety of reasons. I then, like I said before, furthered my education because I realized I wanted to be able to give care at a different level. So I would say another big influencer for me was the first time I was actually hospitalized and had surgery was when I was 6 years old. So I remember that very vividly, and I remember the doctors and nurses that took care of me. And I think that was also a huge influencing factor back then. Not like today where a lot of surgeries are done either outpatient, where you can come in and go home the same day, or if you are in the hospital, it's a brief stay, where compared to when I was 6 years old, we had to stay, it was a 10 to 14 day, it was an average stay in the hospital. So you were there for quite a while. I think that was also a point in my life where I knew that I had interest in it, and I felt as I went on in my career that I could relate at a different level with kids and their families because I was there.
Great, thank you. Dr. Benitez?
I'll say it's like, I was born in the Caribbean. I was always surrounded by nature, animals. I always thought I was either going to be a marine biologist or a veterinarian. And then my father said, it's like, marine biologist, you're just going to starve to death. And it's like, but then I said, but that's what I want to do until like I got into the Florida Everglades doing one of my projects, alligators around. And I said, you know what? There's no way I can't do it. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then it's like, if I'm going to take care of animals, why not take care of people? So I did go to a medical school, and it's unconventional. After that, I said, it's like, you know what? This is not for me. I need to find a new side of medicine. And there was research. I found a new passion for what I do today, which is like basic science research and translational research. And it's just finding your way. It's like, it doesn't matter like whether you're going to make all the money in the world or you're not. It's just 10 years after graduation with a career change, I am happy where I am. So it's about finding it's like that passion and just following all the way through to the moment that you sit and say, is this what I really want to be doing? So whether it's controversial or not.
Great, thank you. Ms. Benke?
Can you hear me okay? Or no?
There we go, yeah.
Okay.
You're all set.
I'm having computer issues, sorry. So similarly, I wouldn't say middle school, high school, that I didn't even know what physical therapy was. So I had no sort of science or healthcare direction at all. I think the starting point for me was getting a job. I used to go after high school to an optical store, and I worked for an eye doctor. And so I started getting interested in healthcare, thinking I was going to be an eye doctor. And so when I went to college, I did do sort of the pre-med route. And about halfway through that, I decided that this was not something I wanted to do. I had worked in the optical field or the optometry field for a couple of years in high school and college, and I started to get bored by it. And so one of my patients was in one day, and we were chatting, and it turns out she was a receptionist at an orthopedic doctor down in the city. And she said, come down and spend the day with some physical therapists. So I did. And I immediately loved it. And so after that, I started volunteering, and then I got a job at a children's school for disabled children. And I really found that was something that I just loved and had a passion for. And the rest is sort of history as far as the direction. But I think it's an interesting point that in middle school, high school, you might have a clear idea, or you may not have any idea. But sometimes, changing directions and finding different avenues through people and talking and asking and really listening. And I was fortunate that I had a patient come in one day and sort of expose me to it. So that's sort of my how I got to physical therapy.
Great, thank you. Dr. Tortorella?
Yeah, so I think my early on in high school, I was always interested in biology, but it seems like I always wanted to know more about dig a little deeper and understand more of the molecular terms of how things function. And then it wasn't, which is crazy, in college, is when my organic chemistry teacher, Dr. Batting, which is the one who really pushed me. And if you take organic chemistry, those guys they're a unique breed, who pushed and said, listen, these are the building blocks. From here, you could understand everything. And he was right on about that. And that extends from everywhere. So those two experiences, I say, really drove me. And he encouraged me to do, research because of my interest, and, to get to where I'm at today. And because we didn't answer that, is so I got my PhD from SUNY Stony Brook, working on diphtheria toxin. Then you do postdoctoral work. And I did that at MIT and Harvard. And then once you feel like you could be independent, you apply for your own lab, and then you get positions. You write grants like Dr. Benitez and Friedman and Fried, and just try to, use NIH money to really explore and really try to test things and try to discover things, that write textbooks as well as therapies, vaccines, and then you just kind of follow what you really feel is your passion.
Thank you. And Dr. Angelo?
Yes, I was lucky to have my mother, who was a nurse. And I had an interest in medicine very early on. I used to go to the hospital where she worked, and we'd have dinner because she did the evening shift. And I remember being a kid and kind of paging through her medical books, anatomy, and things along those lines. I thought that it was fascinating, really kind of learn about how the body worked. And lucky enough, when I made it to high school, to actually work in the hospital at the nurse aide, so I started, ground up, making beds and giving bedpans and going to the lab and wrapping dead bodies and all that kind of stuff. And when I went on to college, I continued to work in a different hospital, bigger city hospital, in the emergency room, and learned a lot of stuff even before I went to medical school. So I really believe those early influences really helped me a lot. So that's why these kinds of forums, I think, are fantastic. And then when I went to medical school, I kind of said, hey, what kind of job would kind of fit my personality? And I thought dealing, in pediatrics, obviously we deal with children and young adults, but we also deal with parents, families, grandparents. So I thought that was fantastic. And I think the other thing is my personality kind of fit, being kind of empathetic and caring and wanting to help people. So I think that's kind of the crux of the way I've gotten to where I've been. Certainly, I think all of us can appreciate how long of a road it has been, but it does go by fast. And if there's an interest in somebody, never ever give up. Just keep pushing and striving to do the best that you can as far as academically. And if you really want to get into healthcare, I think it's fantastic. And considering the year that we had with COVID-19, I think moving forward, healthcare is going to be one of those kinds of career paths that will be, you could be very successful in no matter what field you choose to do.
Great, thank you, everybody. And I think for our attendees, that one of the common themes that we heard was each of our panelists took a different path to get to where they are today, and that there's no quote unquote right way to get to where where you want to end up. And I see a lot of underclassmen on our list here, and Tuckahoe is very lucky to have our senior internship program where students have the ability to go out and try different career areas of interest before they graduate high school. So I think it's important to get out there and try interests of yours and see if it's something that you like. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Trahey for our next question.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to hear so many of you loved biology so much. That makes me feel good. I'm hoping I get similar response with my students. And dissecting the frog is always the highlight of the year. And in AP Bio, when we get to do the pig, that's even better. It's always an exciting part of the school year. So my question is going to be more about your lifestyle and how your job relates to your lifestyle. What are the demands of your job, your commute? Is it easy to balance the demands of your job and with your home and family life and social life? And, how does that all kind of play together? So we can start with you, Dr. Friedman.
Sure. So it's funny, there's no quick and easy answer to that. And I think Dr. Benitez can understand what I'm about to say because we're both at the same place. But so I mentioned I split my time between the hospital setting and the office setting. And so I live in downtown Philadelphia within walking distance from the hospital. And so I really do enjoy those days when I can just walk right into work. It's about a 15-20 minute walk. But I once a week, I do work in a suburban office that's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic outside of the city. And it's funny, my dad actually commutes 1.5 hours to 2 hours each way to get to his job. And so I consider myself very lucky that even my quote long days are not so bad. But as far as the the day-to-day responsibilities, I mean, the commute is just one piece of it. And I think if you love your job, it doesn't really matter what the commute is. My dad, speaking about my dad, he's been doing this for his job for over 30 years and he's still doing it. So he must like it a lot. But as far as for me, I typically see patients on the days that I am in the office from roughly 8 a.m. until about 5 p.m. And when you see patients, there's a lot of charting and paperwork that goes into it as well. And so that can take up some additional time, but I've learned over the years to be as efficient as I can and try to minimize the time outside of the office that I'm spending working on the paperwork. Because I do enjoy life outside of work. I try to go bicycling. I like to see my friends. I have a puppy who you may have seen briefly out of the corner of the screen here. He's actually asleep on the couch right now, but he did try to jump on my lap. I didn't let him. But no, it's, I think I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to choose not just a career, but a job where I can actually have the flexibility to balance all the different things that I enjoy, both between taking care of my patients, doing research, teaching medical students, residents, having the opportunity to even talk to you guys, even in this strange virtual format, and also enjoy life outside of work and maintaining a balance.
That's great. Thank you. Ms. Gardier?
So I work in 3 locations. Actually, I work for Yale New Haven hospital system, and Yale Medicine is my staff affiliation. So I commute to Greenwich, to Norwalk, and to New Haven about once a month. The student teaching that I do is actually within the clinics only. And so I will sometimes have a student with me throughout the day. I'm typically seeing patients from about 9 until 5 or 6 o'clock at night. There is paperwork that definitely goes with that, and time management is important. I think that when you're at work, it can be very busy and demanding. I, as a nurse practitioner, do have, I think, some more flexibility than some of the other disciplines might. And where I do work full time, some of my colleagues work only part time. So they're able to also be home more with their kids or do things that they enjoy doing. When you work for a hospital system, you do get good benefits as well, as far as vacation time, and my weekends and call schedule is minimal. So the times where I have to be around and available to see patients, like on weekends or after hours, is not very frequent. It's maybe once a month.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Dr. Benitez?
So I think it's like for my area, which is like, it's not patient related, well, at least on the clinical side, but it's we should talk about like a pre-COVID and like during and post-COVID. I'm sure Dr. Tortorella knows about this, where we were very much involved in like clinical settings, collecting patient samples and then interacting with the clinical researchers. And then we're in the lab doing experiments, and then COVID happens, and then all that kind of shuts down. And then our focus turns into what should we do now? And there's a lot to do. I mean, because those were the main things, but in the background, we're writing grants and then we're writing papers. And then there's a total shift to now it's like our labs are shut down. It's like, but then we have this vast amount of data that we've been putting aside, and like, this is the time. So they gave us the opportunity to just go back and say, I'm going to write those 3 papers that I've been always wanting to write, or like, let's apply for more funding to get more of this work going. So I think COVID taught us like to reprioritize some things in our research, and not everything was about like generating a new animal model of a disease, but it's like, what can we do with all the data that we have from that past animal model and reinvent some of the things that we have done. So and at least in the clinical research side, we did a lot of that here at CHOP, and then in my personal research. At the same time, I was doing a master's in translational research, so it gave me extra time to write my thesis. So it differs like day to day, but at least when you're exclusively research, it's like you can manage your time. If you learn how to manage your time well, you'd be really, really productive. And like really leave some time for your personal life because it's as important as your work life.
Great, that's really interesting. Thank you. Ms. Banky?
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the words that you mentioned is flexibility. You know, the reason one of the main reasons that I like the idea of being a physical therapist, in addition to, you know, suits my personality, was, you know, you could, as a woman that decides I'm going to, you know, stay home and raise kids, and maybe I'll do home care, or maybe I'll work in a hospital setting. So I have earlier days. If I work in an outpatient, I'll have later days. When I was younger, that was great because I could sleep in. So the flexibility in terms of physical therapy as a career, I think is great. And it was one of the main reasons that I liked it. What I would say is that lifestyle, it depends on what you want your lifestyle to look like when it comes to probably anything in healthcare. But for me, I went from working at Children's Hospital during the day, and I would do orthopedics at night. And then I switched, I flipped it from orthopedics during the day to then doing home care in the mornings. And then I went into my own business. So then I became in charge of not just one location, but 13 locations at the end. So went from, you know, riding my bike to a home care patient when I was 25 to, you know, it was 7 to 10 at night sometimes. So you know, in life in general, and for me in particular, now I'm back to doing some home care. So it's a nice career choice for those that want to have flexibility and change directions when they can. So that's you know, a day depends on what area of PT you go into, but it certainly is a nice lifestyle. And I would say one of the things that I did notice when I was sort of switching from an eye doctor and that direction to, I would go to different settings, right? So I went to a hospital, I went to a school. I actually worked, you know, when I was working in the school. And one thing that I did sort of notice just as a career, they were all happy. Like they were all loved what they did. You know, they were sort of these young, active, because it is also a very physical job. You know, it's something that, so it sort of maybe attracted that personality that was very sort of hands-on and moving around a lot. So that's basically not so much my commute story, but why I picked it story. So
That's great. Thank you very much. Dr. Tortorella?
So I would say in general, it's a very busy day. I mean, I only take, my commute is about 45 minutes, take the Metro North into the city, and then, you know, get to Mount Sinai by subway, or I actually do a city bike. So you get to tour Upper Manhattan, which sometimes is good and bad. But anyway, so it's basically all about time management. I was like, in this particular job, you're always thinking about something. I mean, Dr. Benitez and you know, research is never just something that you just do and you turn off. It's, you know, you're on the train thinking about what you need to do in terms of mentoring, experiments, you know, animal models that you want to prove certain things. You want to just keep rediscovering, reading scientific journals, you know, meetings is journal clubs, seminars on a daily basis. So, you know, my people in my lab have my cell number, and at Sunday at 5 o'clock, they're like, oh, what, we have this, what do we need to do? And, you know, so it's always like, it's never just like you're done. But I think if, you know, physically, I try to be here like on a regular basis, because I think my family is ridiculously important. So I always want to spend time with them. And if the people know me, that I like to be at all their activities. So I think if you do good time management, you go from there. The swing side of it is that, you know, there's scientific meetings all over the world. I've been to Australia, I've been to London, I've been to St. Thomas and different places, because, you know, nobody wants to talk about science for 4 days and, you know, in a boring place. So there's positive and negatives, but I think you just have to know that you're just going to have to work hard, and, you know, it's a career. It's something that you really want to put your passion in. So you're just going to have to put your time and just manage your time correctly, so you could have a great social life, family life, as well as a working life.
That's great. Great. Thank you very much. Dr. Angelo?
Well, I always wanted to be a small town doctor, and I guess my wish came true because I'm lucky enough to work in the community where I live. So I think that's an easy commute, certainly, to work 5 or 10 minute commute makes a world of difference. I don't know if I could make it traveling into the city every day, that's for sure. But some people do that, and that's fine. I think that everybody else really kind of mentioned it. I think balance and time management is probably the most important thing that everybody who's on this panel, or really anybody for that matter, can do. Certainly, when we first started our careers off, for me, 25 years ago now, it was kind of out of balance. We were trying to work up toward. And I think as time goes on and you get more experience, you learn how to kind of manage a life better. I have 3 children. I think I've made every one of their games, and we've not been able to miss that. So the day to day, sometimes we'll stop by the hospital and see newborns, and then come to my office and see patients all day. We're on call once a week. I was on call this past weekend, so that always is fun, and we get a lot more telephone calls there as well. But as I've gotten older, I've certainly learned how to manage my time better and balance my time better, so I'm still able to do the things that I really enjoy doing. So I think just with work experience and experience in general, we're able to learn that.
That's great. Thanks, Dr. Joe. It's great to hear kind of the different experiences that everyone has and some of the common threads that exist in your different fields. It's wonderful. So for everyone listening at home, we'd like to hear some questions from you, something you'd like to ask our panelists, something you might want to know. You can get into the chat, and we'll make sure that they have the opportunity to answer them. I don't know, Mr. C, we might have to offer extra credit for some questions if they don't they don't chime in. But until we get some other questions, Mr. C, you want to take over with the next question?
Yeah, so I know a lot of the panelists spoke about skills, and one of the skills that was commonly mentioned was time management. And that's something that for our students, that skill doesn't go away. It's something that you'll need for the rest of your life. And I know a lot of the teachers in the building preach it now. But one of the questions that we had was a lot of our students will be looking 10, 15 years ahead in the healthcare and science field if it's something that they're interested in. What do you guys believe that 10, 15 years from now will look like in the healthcare science field? And will there be any new or new skills or really important skills that are going to be needed in the future within your field? We can start with Dr. Freed.
So that's a very good question. I think the healthcare landscape is always changing. So anything I say today is probably going to be irrelevant in like even next week. But one thing that my research has focused on, or initially tried to focus on, was demonstrating the feasibility of a telemedicine clinic, meaning like, could we even see patients like virtually in this format, like in basically a Zoom conversation? And we had a lot of difficulty getting that off the ground. But then if we could find something positive that came out of the pandemic, well, there was a rapid switch at CHOP to providing only telemedicine coverage visits, unless there was an emergency or somebody truly needed to be seen in person. And so that's something that I don't think anyone ever anticipated, like having to do exclusively telemedicine, but that's an example of a change that I think is really here to stay. Telemedicine, aside from being a means through which we can provide care in times of national crisis, is also a very nice, convenient way to see patients. I actually am at home right now, and I spent the morning seeing patients via telemedicine. And so that really does, I think that is one thing that will stay in the future. And I think we all have to just adapt to it. It'll be a part of patients' care in some capacity. But one other thing that has definitely dramatically changed the landscape for the practice of healthcare is the shift from pencil and paper or pen and paper for documentation to using electronic medical records. To the point now where a lot of people, when they finish their training, won't take a job at a place that doesn't have an EMR system. And some physicians who are used to pen and paper have a really hard time adapting to using the EMR. There's so many boxes to click and tabs and buttons, and before you know it, you send things in all sorts of different directions. And so I think, like, I wish I could predict the future, but I think some of the things that we're facing now, I think, are good examples of what we can continue to expect to see as time goes on.
Great, thank you very much. Ms. Gardia?
Thank you. So I would echo definitely what Dr. Freed was just talking about. I actually, one of the hats I wear here at Yale is I chair our telehealth committee for the Children's Hospital. And it's been a very, very steep learning curve for us. Our clinics shut down for approximately 9 weeks, and all subspecialists went fully remote for doing virtual visits. And I think that we learned two very important things with that. Number one, younger people have an advantage over middle-aged people who aren't as technically savvy. But number two is that this is definitely something that will be here to stay and has a place and a purpose, but doesn't, you can never fully replace doing a physical exam or assessing somebody in person. That said, I also think one of the benefits to this will be that we are a health system that spans the shoreline of the state of Connecticut. And so some of the people I work with are very subspecialized pediatric specialists, and there's only so many of them. I think where telemedicine is really gonna blossom is given the ability for people who are these super subspecialized clinicians to be able to consult virtually. And I think that will improve the way we deliver healthcare and our quality of healthcare for like across the country, even to areas that are more rural and don't have the same resources that we would have. It also will help people with follow-up and being able to see their physicians more on a regular basis. And it's going to be cost effective because people won't have to take a half a day off work or commute to go see a specialist. So I think there's a lot of pluses, and like I said, it was a steep learning curve. We're still learning, but it's definitely going to be something here to stay.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Benitez?
So I'll have the two things. Like one, I hated my typing class in high school, and it was just terrible. But I'm so thankful for that teacher for like teaching me how to type really fast. Because once you face that like really big paper that you want to finish in a week, you really have to learn how to type fast. And thank God I did. And then the other thing that now we're facing in the research world is like we're all connected. Like information is all around the world. We're getting information from all countries on all different areas of healthcare, and we need to know how to manage that data. And I think it's like there's a huge need of people that really know how to manage big data sets. And like it's terrible the need. It's like we can't hire enough of them in the healthcare system. So the fact that if you're not only interested in science and medicine as a field, but also have an interest in like how to manage that data that you receive from the field, I think you'll be invaluable. Like you'll be the most seeked person in the field if you have both skills.
Excellent. Ms. Benke?
So the question was sort of the future, if there's things that, is that the question? Things I'm just.
Yeah, so I was asking what the next 10 to 15 years might
Yeah, right.
in healthcare.
Gotcha, okay. So I would say for physical therapy in general, there definitely was more teletherapy going on. There was more streamlining of software. So when I first started, you'd have these stack of charts, and we rented rooms just to put the charts, and it was just paper everywhere. So things are changing in that. Things are more, you have to be able to type and use devices. So those, I know the younger generation coming up not going to have a problem with that. But as far as the field as a whole, I think going forward, we're going to continue to see an elderly population more and more. There's going to be even more demand for therapy with, senior citizens, Medicare population. And then we're also seeing a shortage with pediatrics. There's plenty of demand for therapists going into pediatrics, where they go out to the homes and evaluate and assess early intervention and things like that. So going forward, it's a field that's really wide open as far as demand goes, both with the younger and older population. And I don't really see that changing too much in 10 years from now. It's only going to be more in demand. So that's sort of my take in going forward 10 years.
Great, thank you. Dr. Tortorella?
Yeah, so I think I want to echo Dr. Benitez with the idea of big data with regards to bioinformatics. So we're going to need people that know how to write code because the information is there. But I would say that, I see the future as, everybody getting their genome sequenced. They're going to analyze these, find out who is prone to specific diseases, going to have like a genetic code card, like a vaccine card. And then they're going to be able to predict things and hopefully, prevent disease. In terms of treating diseases, I think there's, the technology out there is incredible. The stem cell field has exploded. And, I think that's going to be a big research strategy as well as, a treatment in stem cell and gene therapy using different types of viral vectors to really, actually cure diseases in that way. And you could see by immunotherapy, it's now combined research, antibodies, drugs. So I think there's going to be just like also there's going to be a mixture of like engineering coming together with computer scientists and, researchers and clinicians. And I think that's where I think the future is going to be. So where everybody has to learn how to speak the same language and talk to each other and then work together to really tackle some things like SARS, cancer, any other kind of physiological types of diseases and genetic diseases. That's where I see the future.
Great, thank you.
So if I can just go off of that for a quick second, I just wanted to say that's a really good point because in epilepsy, we're moving to the future, I think, of epilepsy as a field involves genetic testing.
Right.
And we're finding a lot of our kids who have otherwise idiopathic epilepsy, which means we don't know why they have seizures, that there are actually genetic mutations that actually offer a good explanation for why they have seizures. And it's a very, very neat field and really something that we couldn't really offer 5-10 years ago. And now we're implementing it as sort of like standard of care. When I see a new patient with seizures, we're almost automatically having them all checked for different genetic mutations so that we can help them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to take Dr. Angelo's time, but we're working with a group and whether we'll see how it goes, where they're thinking that there's like a virus somehow involved in Alzheimer's or whether it exacerbates the problem. So that's exactly what it fits like. What we think is one thing is now there's a lot of combination happening. So I think everybody needs to kind of think outside that diseases and so on doesn't just come from like a sole, just one cause and so on like that. It's coming from all different areas. But sorry, Dr. Angelo.
No problem. Just echoing that, I was hoping that some of my research colleagues could figure out how to give virtual shots, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I do agree with everybody. I think technology, certainly in my career, technology has changed, and even a couple years down the road, technology could even be a whole different, where we could treat a whole host of different kinds of things. I think the telemedicine is helpful as well. I do agree with Therese that there's nothing like examining a patient and having that kind of human touch. So I think caring and compassion is still there in healthcare. And I think that will always be there, at least till the end of my career. But it wouldn't be uncommon that somebody would just scan our whole bodies and figure out what's wrong with us, and then maybe kind of tweak our gene or something like that by the end of my career. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But I do think being a compassionate, caring person, any of us, that we're here to help in different kinds of ways. And I think that is something that is important if you choose one of these kinds of career paths.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we have about 10 minutes left with the panel. So we're going to turn to Mr. Trahey, who's going to ask actually an audience asked question, and then we'll do a little wrap up. All right, Mr. Trahey?
Sure. So I just want to also piggyback on what you guys were all saying. It's great to hear. We talk so much in our biology curriculum about genetics and how it's the way of the future. And we tell the kids that all the time. And we spend a lot of time getting into, bioinformatics and all that kind of stuff, and how it can all areas of biology, not even just medicine, but evolution and everything else. So it's great to hear. I'm glad to hear it from somebody other than me. So the last question, we'll do kind of a lightning round here to just finish up, was an audience asked questions. What advice you would give your younger self that would have made your path easier? Or we can even just add to that and say, what advice would you give a young person who's who's considering a career in the health sciences. So we start with you, Dr. Fried.
Sure. So I'll give the same advice that I got when I was your age, which really seemed like a million years ago, but really just follow your interest. I mean, you're allowed to change your mind. And even when I was in college, I really had no idea which direction I was going to go in. And I was lucky that I narrowed it down to 2 fields, but just just don't be afraid to try new things and take advantage of any opportunities that come your way. I think, such as this panel, for example, I think it's a great opportunity for us, at least, to share what we do and why we're so passionate about the fields that we have chosen for our careers. And also make sure you work hard and get good grades. Listen to your teachers.
Great, thank you. Good advice. Ms. Gardier?
So I would say a couple of things is, number one, definitely you have to find your passion and you have to love what you do, because you're going to do it more than you do anything else in your entire life. And I think that where sometimes when you hear how long it takes to become something, that can be overwhelming. Like you hear about medical school residency, a fellowship, or Dr. Tortorella talking about postdoctoral work, and it seems like an eternity, but it's not. And one of my mentors said to me once, Therese, someday you're going to be 30 no matter what career you choose, because I was going back and forth between what I wanted to do. And then another piece of advice that I think applies to everything in life is you don't have to be the best at all, but you always have to do your best. And that will always be enough. So do your best and work hard.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Benitez?
I think definitely find yourself a mentor, like a really good mentor. I think that's the most, until I found that real person that said, okay, this is what you want to do. This is what you need to do to get there, and made me see things that were possible. And these are ways to help you make them possible. Then that's where my career took a turn. So it took me a long time. I wish I had found a mentor like at the age of the group, of the audience. But yeah, send that email, those 20, 30 emails that you need to send, but find a really good mentor. It's not a one-time mentor. A mentor is somebody that is there when you need them to be there, and then you work together. Is a back and forth relationship on how to like really advance your career. So yeah, go ahead and reach out. You don't have to.
That's great. Thank you very much. Ms. Banky?
Yeah, I'll just echo with Therese and was mentioning about working hard and bringing your best self to things. I think that one of the common denominators with picking or going down a path is connecting with people. They're the relationships, right, that you're going to come in contact with, and that might be on a team. It might be something that you volunteered for. I think the main sort of focus in your path and your journey is that it's going to take turns, right? You're going to think something and then you're going to change your mind, and that's okay. But I think that the most important thing, and it's so hard and it sounds so simple these days, but is to talk to people, listen, and really ask yourself what you like. What is it that I really have a passion or love for, or and that comes over time. You're not going to know that in middle school, high school, and maybe you'll figure it out in college. But it's something that you have to just keep asking yourself that question, and you have to listen to the adults and people around. So if healthcare is something that you're interested in, ask people questions. And then once you get into a place where you are now exposed to it, spend that time really wisely and really pay attention to those around you, and get as much information and advice as you can from them, and respect the fact that they've been down that road. And just take risks and do the best you can in school, in everything you do. If you come with 100%, if you come wanting to be the best that you can and do the best that you can, you're going to be successful no matter what.
Great, thank you. That's great advice. And Dr. Tortorella?
First, I would try to get my high school to actually have this type of panel. That I think would have made my life a little easier. And I mean, just to be brief, because I think everybody's brought up great points, is that, don't freak out when you stumble. I mean, it's just like some kid that gets like an A- or a B+, and it seems like it's the end of the world, and you stress over stuff like this or your grade, so it's okay to stumble. You learn from it, pick yourself up, Don't let it affect you and just move on. Just keep working hard.
So true. Thank you very much. And Dr. Angelo, to add to that?
To finish and echo everybody's great thoughts, I think it's really important just to really work hard and persevere. It's also important to dream. And, you know, if anybody could become a doctor, I certainly did it. And I wasn't the best student when I was in high school, so I had to work even harder to get to that point. But I think it's also important to understand that it's also time to have some fun and relax a little bit as well. So, you know, if anybody's ever considering a career pediatrics, somebody can put my email out there and I'll be glad to ask any questions for anybody who needs that. Thank you to all the panelists as well. I think everybody did a great job.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Angelo. This was all wonderful to hear and to hear all the different, you know, aspects of the healthcare field, both clinical and research-based. And, you know, when we talk about this stuff in biology class, it doesn't always, you know, have the same effect in hearing it from the professionals themselves who do it. So, you know, we really appreciate it here. And Mr. C is going to wrap us up.
Yeah, so I'd really like to thank those who attended today. I also would really like to thank Dr. Goodman, Mr. Tobin, and the PTA for really supporting and putting together this initiative. As Dr. Tortorella mentioned, this is such a great idea and such a great way for our students to get exposure to different career fields and different career areas. Today, in particular, they were very lucky to have such an impressive group of panelists to share their experiences with us. So we want to thank you all for talking and taking time out of your busy days to share this with our students. And to our students who are listening, the PTA would like to know what career fields you're interested in hearing about. So if you have any interests or anything, any career areas that you'd like to know more about, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Tobin or myself or Mr. Trahey. We'd be more than happy to share with the PTA your thoughts or your interests. All right. So at this time, thank you, Mr. Trahey, for co-hosting with me. Thank you all of our panelists for taking the time out of your day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.